Your Excellency High Commissioner Claire Ireland, thanks for joining us in News Central for this exclusive interview. I'd like to start off by saying we commiserate with the good people of Australia on the unfortunate bushfires, and we condole with Australia.
Thank you so much for your kind welcome. I'm really grateful, and it's my first interview here in Nigeria, so it's exciting to be here at News Central.
We're happy to get that exclusive.
I mean, the bushfires are so tragic, so thank you so much for your kind wishes. I know that it's an ongoing support that we're doing in Australia. We're moving very much now from response to recovery, but sadly we lost 29 lives and 2,900 homes were lost, so it's been a real tragedy, but yeah.
Well, it's a good thing the heavens have opened up, the rains are here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's been a very good contrast from the droughts to the fires and now to the rain, and I think that just kind of highlights the challenges of the environment in Australia. But we've got a really good response going on, and we've had a lot of support internationally, which has been great.
Fantastic. So, how has your experience been in Africa and Nigeria in particular since you became High Commissioner?
So far, so good. I'm really enjoying Nigeria. It's not my first time to Nigeria. I first came in 1999. Then I was in Abuja and I went up to Jos, and I remember at that time just thinking how there were just people everywhere. It was such a busy kind of culture. But I've had the privilege to live and work in Uganda, Kenya and South Africa. So coming here to Nigeria and to West Africa is a whole different perspective. But so far,
quite around the continent.
Yeah, the first half of my career I was pretty much in Africa. I spent sort of 15 years working sub-Saharan Africa, and I started off as an environment specialist working on the ground on technical programs. I then kind of moved much more into Asia Pacific and was working much more in the Pacific when I was with the Australian government and Asia too. But I'm loving coming back and bringing those lessons from what we've seen and experienced in Asia and sort of being able to share those kind of experiences here.
Your Excellency, you're the first female High Commissioner in Nigeria and other countries in West Africa. How much of a giant leap is this, especially in your country and areas of assignment?
I feel completely, really honoured to be the first female High Commissioner here, but it definitely is a landmark. 60 years and it's the first female, come on. I mean, that's a long time. But the Australian government takes women in leadership really seriously, and over the last 5 years there's been a really significant drive to change it. 5 years ago, there were only 25% of ambassadors or high commissioners were women. Now that's 43%, and there's a target to try and get at least 50% in the next year.
People talk about the distance, Australia. Anytime you mention Australia, so far as the end of the world is. So why should Nigerians be excited about Australia?
You're right, it's a long distance, but in this modern day and age, that's not far on a plane, right? But also what's striking for me coming here to Nigeria is just the similarities between our two countries, and people wouldn't often think that. But both our economies are really driven by the sort of mining and agricultural sectors. And so there's so much kind of that we can share in our own experiences, but equally kind of the trade between the two countries, there's that real potential. So it's a long way away, but there's a lot in terms of similarities. We've also got an amazing education sector, and we've got 6 universities in the top 100 in the world. And we find an increasing number of Nigerians going over to study in Australia, which is phenomenal. It gives them also a real gateway entry to Asia Pacific. 30% of international students in Australia are Chinese, right? And then we've got Indians as well. So by going to Australia, you meet a lot of Asian communities, and it gives you that access to those networks for building up those businesses. So I think it's a real...
Yes, not just opportunities in Australia.
Exactly. We've got a lot in common. We've got really good kind of access to the Asia Pacific, and we're just a real kind of like-minded in terms of our sort of whole approach and our foreign policy agendas too. So there's a lot in common. It's a long way, but there's a lot in common.
Absolutely. Now, talking about business, in 2011, the Nigerian-Australia Trade and Investment Council was established. How has it fared since then?
Yeah, that's a really good question. That's something I'm exploring myself. I only arrived in September, so I'm trying to get up to speed on how things have developed. In fairness, I don't think it's gone very far. And actually, I've got a meeting with Pascal Dozier. He was one of the original chairs of that meeting. So I was going to ask him that very question, how's it fared? But I think in reality, these things are demand-driven processes, right? And so you need the demand there by the private sector. My understanding is that perhaps to date that's not really happened. So certainly under my tenure, I'm keen to really explore what the challenges are and what the opportunities are potentially to take it forward. But I'll certainly be asking Mr. Dozier, as part of the initial kind of chair, what he thinks the opportunities are going forward.
Now, this year makes it 60 years since Nigeria and Australia established diplomatic relations between both countries. How has the relationship been?
I think, well, importantly, it also marks 60 years of independence for Nigeria, right?
Oh, yes.
And that's incredible. So I think for us, we've had a really long-term engagement. We had someone on the ground before the independence, and right from day one, we've been here as a partner. You know, it's a really, you know, it's a modest relationship, but a strong relationship. We've been here throughout. We've engaged actively on the Commonwealth together as, you know, Commonwealth members. We've worked a lot in the kind of the education sector, I said, as increasing numbers, and certainly in mining as well. We've had a really strong engagement in that. So it's been a long relationship and a really sort of strong one.
What would you say are some of the milestone achievements in those 60 years?
For me, I think, you know, it's been a growing one, right? It's been a real nurturing and evolving one. And I think Australia's whole engagement in Africa has evolved during that time. A real pivotal point for me, I think, was 2003 when Nigeria hosted CHOGM in Abuja.
Commonwealth Heads of Government.
Exactly, the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. Our president at the time, John Howard, he came across and he had a really good relationship with President Obasanjo, who was the head at the time. From that, we really scaled up our engagement in the mining sector. The president asked if we could share some of our experiences and lessons, and that's what we really kind of moved forward in that particular space. So now, for example, the mining legislation in Nigeria is very much based on Western Australian mining legislation. It's kind of
best practices.
Best practice in the world. We were able to share our technical expertise. We were able to also send a lot of Nigerians over to West Africa, to Perth, to learn from our companies. So I think that really kind of changed.
So there are collaborations happening in different
absolutely.
areas.
And often it's not visible, right? I mean, sometimes people say, "Oh, Australia's not doing much here," but it's like we're a kind of real, kind of slow, steady. We work kind of, with relationships and deepening those skills.
And in very important sectors too.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said right at the start, it's the very similar sectors. Our kind of economies are driven by the mining and minerals sector and agriculture sector, just as Nigeria is. So what a better partner you could have.
Now, away from the Australian awards, what other assistance programs have been offered to the Nigerian government?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Australia Awards, because it is something we're really proud of. Over the last 10 years, Australian government sponsored 400 students to go to Australia and study, which is phenomenal. So that is one of our real key programs. But obviously we fund a lot of our resourcing through the multilateral organisations. We recognise that Australia coming over and being another bilateral aid partner doesn't add value in that sense.
It should be symbiotic.
Yeah, so we put a lot of aid resourcing through the multilaterals and we let the UN, the World Bank implement that. On the bilateral level, that's where we go on the real people-to-people links. Yeah. So in the education sector, the Australia Awards, by kind of sponsoring students to go to Australia. Likewise, in the education sector more broadly, that the students are coming across and then coming back. The agricultural sector, in the past, we've had our agricultural, Australia Centre for International Agricultural Research had programs here. Our CSIRO had also joint projects and partnerships, but they're often sort of not big projects out there.
That's a lot happening.
But they're partnerships, right? We've got a good partnership going on with Nigeria. We work at the kind of that level. We have the mining guys who've been going across to Perth for a number of years now. So it's that kind of people-to-people link that we really have been investing in.
And of course, it's not a one-way relationship.
No.
What is Nigeria offering to Australia in return?
That's a really good question. I think, the fact we do have this strong partnership, that we work together at the multilateral level quite a lot. So we've been recently together on the Human Rights Council. We were joint members of the Security Council. So we really work together, particularly in like New York and those forums. Yes. That our diplomats have really good relations with each other. Here on the ground, we're made to feel so welcome. I mean, as diplomats, we come here, all of my team, we get this great welcome when we come here.
Yeah, you did mention off camera the High Commission in Abuja.
Yeah.
There's a new building that's coming up.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that was for us a really good signal to Nigeria that we are,
here to stay.
We're here to stay. Like we've been here for 60 years, as you highlighted earlier on. But we're seeing it as a long-term investment. So we recently bought a piece of land. We've built a new
That's
embassy.
An act of confidence on the part of the state.
Absolutely. Yeah. We see Nigeria as really important as a partner. So we're here to stay.
Australia's visa services in Nigeria have been reformed with applicants doing biometric capturing in your commission, and while they are being referred to VFS. Why is this?
Yeah, let me clarify.
Yes.
So people don't come to the High Commission to have their biometrics done. They actually go to VFS. And VFS do that for so many countries. I went and visited the VFS bureau when I first arrived, and you could see all the European countries, their biometrics are done there. Australia's done there, Canada, America.
Portugal.
Yeah, so it's the central biometrics centre, which we feel is obviously much more efficient and effective for Nigerians. They know where to go, they know where so they don't need to come to the embassy.
Exactly.
Yeah, and because it is all now online applications, it makes it so much simpler and quicker for Nigerians to apply. It means you can apply anywhere in the world. You don't just need to be in Nigeria, you can be anywhere.
Now, the trade volume between Nigeria and Australia, including other West African nations, is quite low. How can we balance this trade?
Oh, yes. Good question, really good question, and it's really sad because you're right. Between Nigeria and Australia, it's low, and and certainly for my tenure here, I would like to see that grow, and that's something I'm going to be really working on. But the reality is, when you look around the rest of Africa, it's not low. There's over 10 billion of investment, Australian investment in West Africa. It's just not in Nigeria. I think the Australians find it difficult.
Nigeria has the natural resources, because a lot of it has to do with the mining sector.
Exactly. We've got two Australian...
BHP billeted presence in a few African countries.
Yeah, so you have the big boys, you have the big kind of mining companies in West Africa, but not in Nigeria. And I think because the mining sector is still quite underdeveloped here, they're not quite prepared to go. But we have two Australian stock exchange listed companies here. They're working really closely with the Ministry of Mines and Steel Development, and we're really hopeful that if we work closely together, we'll get a good, successful project.
A lot of collaborations. And Nigeria is looking at moving beyond the monoproduct economy, so it should be a win-win situation.
Yeah, and I think once you get one good kind of mining example happening and stock exchanges and companies succeeding, then the rest will flow. So there is money.
The future is quite bright, yes.
There's money. We just need to get it here. That's the challenge. We need to get it away from our partner countries in West Africa and get the mining companies here.
Now, that leads me to my next question. How much of an impact has the Australian Trade Commission, Austrade, made in assessing new markets across Africa for Australian companies?
So it's getting there. It's getting there. I mean, it's slowly but surely. Particularly, I go back to the education sector, because I think that what they've achieved in that sector has been incredible. It's gone from 2015 to having just 1,500 students from Nigeria going to Australia up to sort of nearly 3,000 now. And so what they have been doing...
Sorry to interrupt, there are quite a lot of PhD students.
Mainly masters, But like I said, we've got 60 universities in the top 100 in the world. We've had our universities now over the last 4 years, thanks to Austrade, have been coming here to Nigeria to promote kind of what are the standards of our universities. And I was lucky to go to one of those fairs back in October, just after I arrived, and it was fantastic to see the amount of Nigerians really interested in that postgraduate study, looking at masters, MBAs, geology, kind of, again, agriculture, mining, the sectors that we've got a real strength in. So I was impressed what Australia has done in that sector in particular.
Now, how are Nigerian professionals faring in Australia, Nigerians living in Australia generally?
I love meeting the Nigerian diaspora when I go to Australia. They are vibrant, they are feisty, and they're engaging. So I was in Perth just recently, and all of the... within every city, the Nigerians have set up an association. So when I went to Perth, the Nigerian Association invited me round. They hosted me, and they were so welcoming. They cooked for me all the jollof rice. They were giving me all Nigerian kind of food, but they're so engaging, so welcoming. And if anything, I feel quite intimidated, because they're doctors, they're surgeons, they're lawyers, they're professors. The Nigerian diaspora in Australia are incredibly, smart and educated and really successful. But they're very welcoming.
And what does Africa First mean to you?
I think it's like many of us around the world, is that ensuring that we have our economies kind of working efficiently, effectively first, before we then look externally. And I think that's a legitimate kind of reason for Africa too. And we see that right now with Australian fires right now, where our focus is absolutely on recovery from the fires and investing in recovery at home. And that makes absolute sense in Africa too, that you've got to look back, getting your economy set up right, getting everything kind of working, and then going on the global platform.
Your Excellency High Commissioner Claire Ireland, it's been a pleasure talking to you on News Central. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Taking your time to join us.